The advertisement had blinked across Leo's retinal feed during a particularly soul-crushing shift recalibrating waste recyclers on the orbital scrapyard Persephone's Lament. It was garish, pulsing neon against the grimy backdrop of his reality. Cosmic connections, guaranteed soulmates across the spiral arm. 99.9% compatibility or your cryo credits back. Desperation, fueled by 3 years of recycled air, protein paste, and the haunting silence of his tiny hab unit, made him tap the acceptance glyph. The fee, half his meager quarterly bonus, vanished instantly. The profile form was absurdly simple. Species: human, Terran standard. Interests: not dying alone. Deal breakers: sentient mold, excessive tentacles. He uploaded a slightly outdated hollow image, smoothed his perpetually rumpled jumpsuit in the reflection of a coolant pipe, and hit confirm blind date. He didn't read the fine print about multiversal compatibility algorithms or non-standard client profiles. He just wanted someone to share a synth beer with who wouldn't complain about the smell of ozone and despair. The rendezvous point wasn't a bar, or a park, or even a decently lit transit hub. It was the Whispering Spire, a gravity-defying obsidian needle piercing the lavender-hued sky of Viridia Prime, a planet Leo had only seen in grainy tourist brochures. Its surface shimmered with bioluminescent forests and rivers of liquid light, a stark, almost painful contrast to the metallic grime he called home. He arrived an hour early, heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, wearing his best outfit, a slightly less stained jumpsuit and a synthetic leather jacket that creaked ominously. He felt like a grease monkey who'd accidentally wandered onto a luxury starliner. The air smelled sweet and alien, thick with unfamiliar pollens that made his nose itch. He fidgeted near a fountain where water droplets danced in slow-motion arcs, defying gravity before vanishing into mist. What if she's a 6-armed insectoid? What if she thinks human pheromones smell like rotten eggs? What if she's just here for the 99.9% guarantee and bolts the second she sees me? His internal monologue was a frantic loop of anxiety. Then she arrived, not with a dramatic entrance, but with a quiet stillness that seemed to absorb the ambient light. She stood beneath the spire's shadow, tall and slender, her skin the luminous white of moonlight on fresh snow. Her hair, long and impossibly fine, cascaded down her back like spun starlight, pure white and catching the lavender sky in subtle shifts. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, were the deep, fathomless violet of nebulas Leo had only seen in deep space surveys. Pointed, elegant ears, reminiscent of Terran myths about elves, peeked through her hair. She wore simple, flowing robes of a fabric that seemed to shift color subtly, from silver to pale blue, as she moved. She looked ethereal, and utterly, devastatingly out of his league. Leo's mouth went dry. He fumbled with the small bouquet of glow petals he'd nervously bought from a street vendor, nearly dropping them. Okay, Leo, don't trip. Don't say something stupid. Just breathe. Leo. Her voice was soft, melodic, yet carried an underlying resonance that vibrated in his bones. It wasn't translated through his implant. It felt like it resonated directly in his mind, clear and warm. Why yes, that's me. Leo Vance. He thrust the glow petals forward, petals pulsing a nervous pink. These, they smelled nice? Or glowed nicely? The vendor said they were romantic. He winced internally. Romantic? Really, Leo? A faint, genuine smile touched her lips, crinkling the corners of those violet eyes. They're lovely, Leo. Thank you. I am Lyra. She accepted the flowers, her long, slender fingers brushing his for a fleeting second. A jolt, warm and electric, shot up his arm. Shall we walk? The spire's gardens are particularly serene at this hour. Her calm demeanor was a balm to his frayed nerves. They strolled along winding paths lined with crystalline flora that chimed softly as they passed. Lyra asked easy questions about Terra, about his work, about why he signed up for Cosmic Connections. Leo, initially stumbling over his words, found himself relaxing. She listened intently, her gaze focused, making him feel seen. Not judged for his grease-stained hands or his humble origins, but genuinely interested. He learned she was a scholar of comparative galactic ecosystems, fascinated by the resilience of life in extreme environments, which, he joked weakly, explained his attraction to orbital scrapyards. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, and the sound did strange, fluttering things to his insides. Humor, unexpected and warm, bloomed between them. He told her about the sentient mold incident on Deck 7. It developed a taste for synth coffee and started composing melancholic dirges on the air vents. and she shared a story about a mischievous flock of gravity-defying avians on her homeworld that once stole an entire delegation's ceremonial robes. For the first time in years, Leo felt a lightness, a spark of connection that felt terrifyingly real. The idyllic stroll shattered without warning. The sky, moments ago a serene lavender, fractured with streaks of violent crimson. A deep, guttural roar, amplified 1,000-fold, tore through the atmosphere, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The crystalline flora shrieked in dissonant harmony. Panic erupted. Tourists and locals alike scattered like startled insects. Leo instinctively grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her behind the thick, obsidian trunk of a whispering tree just as a shadow blotted out the sun. It was a warship, but not just any warship. It was a leviathan of obsidian metal and jagged spines, bristling with weapon emplacements that glowed with malevolent crimson energy. This design was brutal, functional, radiating pure aggression. It hovered low, its underbelly splitting open to disgorge dozens of smaller, insectoid assault skiffs that buzzed towards the city like metallic hornets. Laser fire stitched the air, vaporizing fountains and shattering elegant spires. The air filled with the acrid tang of ozone and burning stone. Void spawn, Lyra hissed, her earlier serenity replaced by sharp, focused intensity. Her violet eyes narrowed, scanning the chaos with unnerving calm. They've tracked me here. Tracked you? Leo stammered, ducking as a stray energy bolt vaporized a section of the path where they'd been standing seconds before. Who are they? Why? No time. Lyra grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Run. To the spire's central core. It has defenses. She didn't wait for an answer, pulling him into a sprint down a side alley choked with panicked crowds. Leo's legs burned, his lungs screamed, but the terror in Lyra's voice, the sheer wrongness of this beautiful place being torn apart, fueled him. He saw a skiff hover low, its weapon turret swiveling towards a group of cowering children huddled near a collapsed archway. Without thinking, pure instinct overriding fear, Leo scooped up a chunk of shattered obsidian pavement and hurled it with all his strength. It clanged harmlessly off the skiff's hull, but it drew the turret's fire. The blast cratered the ground where the children had been, but they'd scrambled away in the distraction. Leo felt a surge of grim satisfaction mixed with terror. They reached the base of the Whispering Spire. Its entrance, a seamless archway of dark stone, shimmered with a faint energy field. Lyra placed her palm flat against a seemingly blank section of the wall. Symbols flared to life beneath her touch, intricate, glowing sigils that pulsed with the same violet light as her eyes. The energy field rippled and dissolved, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Inside. Quickly, she urged, shoving Leo through before following and sealing the entrance behind them. The relative silence inside was jarring after the cacophony outside, replaced only by the hum of hidden machinery and their ragged breathing. The corridor sloped steeply upwards, lit by soft, recessed lights. Leo leaned against the cool wall, gasping. Okay, he panted, wiping sweat and grime from his forehead. Blind date from hell. Check. Alien warlords trying to kill us. Check. Now maybe why? Who are you, Lyra? Because I'm guessing you're not just a galactic ecologist who likes pretty gardens. Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. The ethereal scholar was gone, replaced by someone older, harder, burdened by weight Leo couldn't fathom. She took a deep breath, her white hair seeming to glow faintly in the gloom. I am Lyra of the Triad Concordance, she said, her voice low and resonant. And the Triad Concordance owns 3 galaxies. Leo stared. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes. Owns 3 galaxies? The words felt absurd, like something out of a bad holodrama. Like, all the stars? All the planets? The everything. Precisely, Lyra confirmed, a flicker of wry humor returning to her eyes despite the gravity of the situation. The Andromeda Spiral, the Helix Nebula Cluster, and the Viridian Expanse, which includes this planet, Viridia Prime. My family's stewardship spans millennia. We maintain the balance, the flow of resources, the delicate peace between thousands of species. She gestured vaguely upwards, towards the battle raging outside. Those void spawn? They are mercenaries, hired by a rival faction within the Concordance Council. They believe my lineage's claim is weak, because I chose a path of study over politics, because I sought connection beyond duty. Her gaze met Leo's, intense and searching. They tracked the energy signature of my personal transport when I came here for this. She nodded towards him. They saw an opportunity. Eliminate me during a moment of perceived vulnerability, during a blind date. She almost smiled, but it was tinged with bitterness. They vastly underestimated the date. Leo's mind reeled. 3 galaxies, ownership, galactic politics, mercenary fleets. It was too vast, too insane. He looked at her, the luminous white skin, the starlight hair, the violet eyes holding ancient knowledge and sudden, terrifying responsibility. And he looked at his own grease-stained hands, still trembling slightly from adrenaline. The absurdity of it crashed over him, followed by a wave of hysterical laughter. He doubled over, clutching his stomach. You own 3 galaxies and you signed up for cosmic connections. He wheezed between laughs. What was the profile question? Interests. Managing stellar nurseries and preventing supernova-induced economic collapse? Deal breakers. People who can't afford intergalactic tolls. Lyra stared at him for a second. Then a genuine, surprised laugh escaped her, bright and clear, cutting through the tension like sunlight. Something like that, she admitted, a real smile finally reaching her eyes. Though the algorithm did highlight your unique resilience metrics. Surviving Persephone's lament apparently scores highly for adaptability under duress. She sobered quickly, her expression turning serious again. But Leo, this is no longer just about me. They know you were with me. They will assume you know things or that you are leverage. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They will hunt you too. As if on cue, a deep, resonant thud shook the spire, followed by the shriek of tearing metal high above. Red emergency lights began to pulse along the corridor walls. They've breached the outer defenses, Lyra stated, her scholar's calm replaced by the decisive authority of a leader. The spire's core systems are failing. We cannot stay here. She moved to a recessed panel on the wall, her fingers flying over hidden controls. A section of the floor slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft descending into darkness. This leads to the planetary transit hub. My personal skiff is docked there. It's shielded, fast, and armed. Armed, Leo squeaked, peering down the dark shaft. You have a spaceship? A necessity of the job, Lyra said dryly, already swinging her legs over the edge. Coming? Or would you prefer to wait for the void spawn boarding party? I hear their hospitality involves neural extraction and forced labor in asteroid mines. Leo didn't hesitate. He scrambled into the shaft after her, the rough metal scraping his palms. The descent was terrifying, a near-vertical drop into utter blackness, guided only by Lyra's sure movements and the faint glow emanating from her skin. Below, the sounds of battle grew louder, explosions, the whine of energy weapons, distant screams. They emerged into a vast, cavernous hangar bay, lit by flickering emergency strips. In the center, bathed in a pool of soft white light, sat Lyra's skiff. It was sleek and elegant, shaped like a teardrop of polished silver, utterly unlike the brutal void spawn vessels. It hummed with a quiet, powerful energy. They sprinted across the open floor, Leo's heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Halfway across, klaxons blared. Heavy blast doors at the far end of the hangar began grinding open. Silhouetted against the hellish red light of the burning city beyond were figures, tall, armored in jagged black carapace, with multiple limbs and glowing red photoreceptors where faces should be. Void spawn shock troops. Run! Lyra yelled, shoving Leo forward. She raised her hand, and a shimmering violet energy shield snapped into existence around them just as a barrage of crimson bolts slammed into it. The impact threw them both off their feet, the shield flaring violently before stabilizing. Leo scrambled up, dragging Lyra with him. They dove behind a stack of cargo containers as more bolts sizzled overhead, melting the durasteel like butter. The skiff, Leo gasped, pointing. It was only 50 meters away, but it might as well have been a light year with the void spawn pouring into the hangar. Lyra's eyes narrowed, focusing. She pressed her palm against the container they hid behind. The metal groaned, then flowed, reshaping itself into a crude ramp angled towards the skiff. Distraction, she commanded. Make noise. Anything. Understanding dawning, Leo grabbed a loose pipe from the floor. He took a deep breath, then charged out from cover, waving the pipe wildly and shouting the first thing that came to mind. Hey ugly! Your mother was a malfunctioning toaster, and your father smells like burned circuits. It was juvenile, ridiculous, but it worked. A dozen crimson photoreceptors swiveled towards him. Bolts of energy seared the air around him. He ducked behind another container, heart in his throat, but he'd bought Lyra the seconds she needed. She was already moving, sprinting low and fast towards the skiff, her white hair streaming behind her like a comet's tail. Leo followed, legs burning, the pipe forgotten. He saw her reach the skiff side, touch a panel, and a hatch hissed open. She turned, waving frantically. Leo, now! He put on a final burst of speed, feeling the heat of near-miss energy bolts on his back. He dove through the hatch just as Lyra slammed her hand on the closing control. The hatch sealed with a solid thunk, cutting off the sounds of pursuit. Inside, the cockpit was minimalist, bathed in soft blue light. Consoles glowed with complex, flowing data streams. Lyra was already in the pilot's seat, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. The skiff lifted off the hangar floor with a near-silent hum, accelerating with terrifying speed towards the hangar's ceiling. Hold on, Lyra warned. The skiff shot upwards, punching through the weakened roof of the hangar in a shower of debris and sparks. They burst into the chaotic sky of Viridia Prime. The city below was an inferno. The massive void-spawn dreadnought still hovered, its weapons lashing out. Smaller skiffs swarmed like angry wasps. Lyra's hands were a blur on the controls. The skiff banked violently, weaving through the chaotic airspace with impossible grace. Energy bolts flashed past the canopy, so close Leo could feel the heat. Alarms blared softly. Shields at 65%. A calm, synthesized voice announced. Multiple hostiles locking on. Override safety protocols, Theta, Lyra ordered, her voice tight with concentration. Divert all non-essential power to maneuvering thrusters and forward shields. Engage evasive pattern Sigma 7. The skiff responded instantly, becoming a silver blur. It spiraled around a descending void-spawn skiff, Lyra firing a precise burst from hidden forward cannons that vaporized the enemy craft in a silent explosion of fire. Leo was thrown against his restraints, stomach lurching. He watched, mesmerized and terrified, as Lyra navigated the maelstrom. She wasn't just flying. She was dancing with death, her movements fluid, precise, born of instinct and training he couldn't comprehend. The scholar was gone. The warrior, the guardian of galaxies, was fully in command. They broke through the upper atmosphere, the lavender sky giving way to the star-strewn blackness of space. The dreadnought loomed ahead, its massive form blotting out constellations. They're powering up their main cannon, the ship's AI, Theta, announced. Targeting solution locked. Impact in 10 seconds. Lyra's jaw clenched. Her violet eyes glowed faintly with intense focus. Theta, plot a microjump. Coordinates, Viridian Deep Space Relay Gamma. Maximum possible distance on remaining fuel. Calculating, jump in 5 seconds. Warning, insufficient power for full jump. Probability of successful transit, 37.8%. Do it, Lyra commanded. She slammed a sequence of controls. The stars outside the canopy stretched into blinding lines of light. The dreadnought's main cannon fired, a beam of pure annihilation lancing towards them. The skiff shuddered violently as the jump engaged, space itself tearing open. The last thing Leo saw before the universe dissolved into streaks of color was the terrifying beam of energy missing them by a hair's breadth, vaporizing a chunk of the Viridian moon. Then silence. Utter, profound silence. The violent shaking ceased. The blinding light faded, replaced by the familiar, cold glitter of distant stars. They were adrift in deep space, the Viridian system a distant cluster of angry red and orange pinpricks far behind them. The skiff's lights dimmed, power levels critically low. Emergency reserves flickered. Leo slumped back in his seat, trembling, sweat cooling on his skin. He looked at Lyra. She was breathing heavily, her luminous skin pale even in the dim cockpit light, her white hair slightly disheveled. The fierce concentration had drained from her face, leaving behind exhaustion and a deep, weary sadness. She met his gaze, and for a moment, the weight of 3 galaxies, the betrayal, the violence, seemed to press down on her shoulders. I'm sorry, Leo, she whispered, her voice raw. I never meant. This wasn't supposed to happen. Your blind date shouldn't have involved near-death experiences and intergalactic fugitive status. Leo stared at her, the woman who owned galaxies, who fought like a demon, who laughed at his stupid jokes, who looked at him with such startling vulnerability in her violet eyes. The absurdity, the terror, the sheer, overwhelming scale of it all crashed over him again. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. A fierce, protective anger. A dawning sense of purpose? He reached out, his grease-stained hand covering hers where it rested on the console. Her skin was cool, smooth. Hey, he said, his voice rough but steady. You bought the glow petals. You listened to my stupid mold story. You didn't run screaming when I called your warlords ugly toasters. He managed a shaky grin. Frankly, owning 3 galaxies is the least weird thing about you right now. And honestly, after 3 years on Persephone's Lament, dodging void spawn feels like a Tuesday. He squeezed her hand. So, where to next, Galaxy Girl? Because I think my cryo credits are officially non-refundable. A flicker of that warm, genuine smile returned to Lyra's lips, chasing away some of the shadows in her eyes. She turned her hand, lacing her slender fingers with his rough ones. The contrast was stark, luminous white against human tan, smooth against calloused, yet it felt right. Anchoring. Outside the canopy, the infinite stars watched in silent witness. The skiff drifted, a tiny silver speck in the ocean of night, its power low, its destination uncertain, hunted by forces that commanded armadas. But inside, holding onto the hand of a man who faced down alien horrors with a pipe and a bad joke, Lyra felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in centuries. Hope, fragile but bright, and the thrilling, terrifying promise of a future written not in star charts, but in the uncharted territory of a shared heartbeat. The adventure, the real one, had only just begun, and the void ahead held more than just danger. It held the dizzying, impossible possibility of everything. The skiff drifted in the silent dark, its power reserves flickering like a dying candle. Leo's hand still held Lyra's, a small anchor in the vastness. Theta's calm voice broke the quiet. Power at 12%. Life support stable for 47 hours. Long-range comms offline. Navigation array damaged. Recommend immediate shelter. Lyra squeezed Leo's hand before gently pulling away, her scholar's mind already shifting gears. Theta. Scan for the nearest habitable or minimally hostile system within emergency jump range. Prioritize obscurity over comfort. Scanning. One candidate, Kalos Minor. Class M moon orbiting a rogue gas giant. No registered settlements. Minimal sensor signature. Atmosphere breathable though thin. Gravity 0.8 Terran standard. Kalos Minor, Lyra murmured, her violet eyes distant. It's neutral ground. Forgotten. Perfect. She input the coordinates with careful precision, her movements economical despite her exhaustion. The skiff's engines whined as they sputtered back to life, limping towards the jump point. The transition was rougher this time, space tearing with a groan that vibrated through the hull. When the stars snapped back into focus, they hung above a desolate, cratered moon bathed in the cold, reflected light of its massive, swirling gas giant parent. They landed in a shallow valley between jagged obsidian ridges. The skiff settled with a sigh of stressed metal. Outside, the air was thin and bitingly cold, the sky dominated by the colossal, banded eye of the gas giant. Silence reigned, profound and ancient. For 2 days, they lived in the fragile bubble of the skiff. Lyra worked tirelessly, rerouting circuits, cannibalizing non-essential systems to keep life support and basic sensors running. Leo, drawing on years of jury-rigging scrapyard tech, proved surprisingly adept, his practical, hands-on knowledge complementing her theoretical brilliance. He patched a leaking oxygen recycler with sealant paste and a piece of his own jacket lining. She recalibrated the damaged NAV computer using star charts etched into her memory. They shared ration bars that tasted like chalk and recycled water that tasted like metal, but the shared struggle forged a new kind of intimacy. They talked, really talked. Leo spoke of Earth's lost oceans and the ache of a sky without stars. Lyra spoke of the crushing weight of legacy, of watching civilizations rise and fall like tides across her domains, of the loneliness that came with stewardship on a galactic scale. He made her laugh with stories of malfunctioning sanitation bots. She made him see the universe not as a collection of resources, but as a vast, interconnected tapestry of life, fragile and wondrous. The initial shock of her identity had faded, replaced by a dawning understanding. She wasn't just the owner of Galaxies. She was Lyra, who worried about her research notes, who blushed when he complimented her laugh, who fiercely protected the life she saw as sacred. On the 3rd day, as Lyra was attempting a delicate repair on the external sensor array, Leo noticed it. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer in the air near the skiff's stern. Not a reflection, but a distortion, like heat haze over desert sand. His scrapyard-honed instinct screamed wrongness. Lyra, he hissed, grabbing her arm. Don't move. Look at the air behind us. Left side. She froze, her violet eyes narrowing. She didn't turn her head, but Leo saw the subtle shift in her focus. Her hand, resting near the skiff's hull, began to glow faintly with that same violet energy. Phase-shifted surveillance drone, she breathed, her voice tight. Standard void spawn recon. They tracked our micro-jump signature. They're close. Panic? cold and sharp, lanced through Leo. How close? Close enough. Before he could react, Lyra moved. She shoved him hard towards the skiff's hatch. Get inside. Seal it. Simultaneously, she thrust her hand out, not towards the drone, but towards the ground. The obsidian rock beneath the shimmering distortion rippled, then erupted upwards in a geyser of molten stone, engulfing the drone in a silent, incandescent blast. The distortion vanished, but the damage was done. High above, silhouetted against the gas giant's swirling clouds, 3 void-spawn skiffs decloaked, their jagged forms bristling with weapons. They descended like vultures. No time for the skiff, Lyra yelled, grabbing Leo's hand again. Run! Into the canyons! They sprinted away from their fragile sanctuary just as the first energy bolt vaporized the spot where they'd stood. The skiff's shields, already depleted, flared weakly and collapsed under the second barrage, the hull crumpling like paper. They plunged into the labyrinth of obsidian canyons, the jagged walls offering scant cover. The skiffs hovered above, methodically blasting sections of the canyon floor, hurting them. Leo's lungs burned in the thin air. Lyra's face was set in grim determination, but Leo saw the strain, the toll of constant vigilance and power expenditure. She was weakening, cornered in a dead-end canyon, the skiffs hovering at the entrance, blocking escape. Leo felt despair clawing at him. Then he saw it, a narrow fissure in the canyon wall, partially hidden by a rockfall. There! He gasped, pointing. Can you? Lyra nodded, understanding. She focused, her violet eyes blazing. The rocks blocking the fissure groaned and shifted, grinding aside just enough for them to squeeze through. They scrambled into the darkness just as the canyon behind them erupted in a storm of fire. Inside, it was a natural cave system, winding deep into the moon's crust. Bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie blue-green glow. They collapsed, gasping, the sounds of the skiff's frustrated search echoing faintly from outside. They were safe for now, but trapped. Days blurred into a tense routine of hiding, scavenging edible lichen, and listening to the distant hum of void-spawn patrols. The isolation deepened their bond, but also frayed their nerves. One night, huddled for warmth in a deep chamber, Lyra confessed her deepest fear. The Triad Concordance Council. They won't just send mercenaries forever. If they believe I'm truly gone or compromised, they'll activate the Genesis protocols. Leo frowned. Genesis protocols? Sounds biblical. It's worse, Lyra whispered, her voice trembling slightly. It's a failsafe. If the ruling lineage is deemed extinct or irredeemably corrupted, the protocols initiate a controlled stellar collapse in the core systems of each galaxy. It resets the entire ecosystem, wipes the slate clean, at the cost of trillions of lives. They'd rather burn their own galaxies than let them fall into unworthy hands. Her violet eyes, luminous in the gloom, held a horror that chilled Leo to his core. My disappearance, my association with an unknown human. It might be enough for the hardliners to trigger it. The weight of it crushed Leo. It wasn't just their lives at stake anymore. It was everything Lyra had sworn to protect. The stakes had become unimaginably higher. Their respite ended abruptly. A tremor shook the caves, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy drilling. The void spawn weren't just searching. They were excavating. They'd found their hiding place. We can't stay, Leo said, his mind racing. We need a weapon. Something they won't expect. He remembered the skiff's wreckage. The main power core. It was unstable when they hit it. If we can trigger a feedback surge. It's suicide, Leo, Lyra protested. The core's containment is breached. Getting close would be better than waiting for them to dig us out and hand us over to your council for a reset? Leo countered, his voice fierce. You said I'm adaptable under duress. Let's adapt. Reluctantly, seeing the grim resolve in his eyes, Lyra agreed. Under cover of darkness, using the cave system's echoes to mask their movements, they crept back towards the surface. The skiff was a smoldering ruin, half buried in rubble. The void-spawn skiffs patrolled overhead, their searchlights cutting swathes through the gloom. The main power core, a sphere of crackling blue energy, pulsed erratically within the wreckage, containment fields flickering dangerously. Leo's plan was audacious, born of desperation and scrapyard ingenuity. While Lyra used her abilities to create diversions, causing rockfalls on the opposite side of the valley, projecting illusory heat signatures, Leo crawled through the debris towards the core. His jumpsuit was torn, his hands bleeding, but he focused on the task, rerouting the damaged emergency overload conduit. It was like defusing a bomb made of lightning. One wrong move and he'd be vaporized. He was almost there, fingers trembling as he spliced the final connection, when a searchlight pinned him. A skiff hovered directly above, its weapon turret swiveling down. Leo froze, heart-stopping. Then, Lyra stepped out of the shadows on a ridge above the skiff. She wasn't hiding anymore. She stood tall, her white hair and skin glowing with intense violet energy, radiating power that made the very air crackle. She raised both hands, not towards the skiff, but towards the unstable core and the gas giant looming in the sky. "Theta!" she projected, her voice amplified, resonant with command. "Override all safety protocols. Channel all remaining auxiliary power into the core's magnetic containment field. Maximum inversion." The skiff's AI, though damaged, responded to her biometric signature. A surge of power, the last dregs of the skiff systems, shot into the core. Simultaneously, Lyra focused her own immense will, not to contain the core, but to destabilize it in a specific, controlled way, while simultaneously reaching out with her consciousness towards the immense magnetic field of the gas giant. The core flared blindingly bright. The void-spawn skiff, realizing the danger too late, tried to pull away. But it was caught in the expanding field of distorted gravity and energy Lyra was weaving between the core and the planet. The skiff's systems overloaded, its hull groaning as it was wrenched sideways, crashing into the canyon wall in a shower of sparks. The core didn't explode. Instead, it imploded, collapsing in on itself with a silent, terrifying vacuum that sucked debris inward. Then, the released energy, amplified and redirected by Lyra's connection to the gas giant's magnetosphere, erupted outward in a focused beam of pure gravitational distortion. It wasn't fire. It was a wave of warped spacetime that washed over the other two skiffs. They didn't explode. They unfolded, their structures twisting and collapsing into impossible, non-Euclidean shapes before dissolving into shimmering dust. Silence fell again, heavier than before. The immediate threat was gone. Leo scrambled out of the wreckage, running to Lyra. She stood swaying on the ridge, utterly spent, the luminous glow fading from her skin, leaving her pale and trembling. He caught her as her knees buckled, holding her close. She was ice cold. You used the planet itself as a weapon," Leo breathed, awestruck and terrified. "The Concordance teaches that all things are connected," she whispered against his chest, her voice weak. "Even rogue giants." She looked up at him, her violet eyes filled with exhaustion and something else, a dawning, profound realization. You didn't run. You stayed. You fought for everything." Before Leo could answer, a new sound cut through the silence. Not the whine of skiffs, but the deep, resonant hum of a much larger vessel. A ship of elegant, sweeping lines, pearlescent white and silver, decloaked silently above the valley. It bore no weapons, only intricate, glowing sigils that matched the ones Lyra had used on the Whispering Spire. A single, smaller shuttle detached and descended gracefully towards them. Lyra stiffened in Leo's arms, her expression shifting from exhaustion to wary recognition, then to something akin to dread. "The Ethelgard," she breathed. "The Concordance's diplomatic flagship. They found us." The shuttle landed softly, the hatch opened and a figure emerged. Tall, humanoid, with skin the same luminous white as Lyra's, but with hair of deep, starless black. His features were sharp, aristocratic, his eyes a cold, calculating silver. He wore robes of severe, unadorned white. He looked at Lyra with an expression of profound disappointment. Then his silver gaze flickered to Leo, assessing him with open disdain. "Lyra of the Triad," the man said, his voice smooth as polished stone, yet carrying an undercurrent of steel. "Your escapade has caused considerable disruption. The council grows impatient." His eyes narrowed slightly as they lingered on Leo. "And your choice of companion raises troubling questions about your judgment. Come, the Ethelgard awaits. Your absence has created a power vacuum. It is time you returned to your duties and left your distractions behind." He gestured dismissively towards Leo. The unspoken threat hung heavy in the thin air. Return alone or face the consequences. The man from the council hadn't come to rescue her. He'd come to reclaim an asset and eliminate the complication. Leo felt Lyra tense against him, her hand tightening on his arm. The fragile sanctuary of Kalos Minor was gone. The real battle, not against mercenaries, but against the cold machinery of power and legacy, was just beginning, and the price of their love might be higher than either of them had ever imagined. The silver-eyed envoy stepped forward, his hand outstretched, not in greeting, but in command. "Lyra, the council will not tolerate further defiance. Leave the human. Now. Leo's heart hammered, but he didn't let go of Lyra's hand. He met the envoy's cold gaze squarely. She doesn't belong to your council. She belongs to herself. And if you think dragging her back in chains is going to stop a galactic reset, you're dumber than a deactivated droid. Lyra didn't flinch. Instead, she lifted her chin, her violet eyes blazing with quiet authority. You speak for a faction, Valerius, not the Concordance. She raised her free hand, and the sigils on her skin began to glow, not with violence, but with the deep, resonant hum of ancient code. I invoke the right of solemn accord. My lineage remains unbroken. My choices are my own. And this man, she squeezed Leo's hand, stood with me when your mercenaries came. He saw the truth your council fears. That stewardship isn't control, it's connection. A shimmer rippled through the air. From the Ethelgard above, a new voice echoed, not through comms, but through the very fabric of space. Warm, resonant, unmistakably maternal. Enough, Valerius. A second figure appeared in the shuttle's doorway. Tall, regal, her white hair streaked with silver like starlight on snow, her eyes the same deep violet as Lyra's. The matriarch. She descended slowly, her presence calming the charged air. She looked at Lyra, then at Leo, and for the first time, a gentle smile touched her lips. You found him, she said simply. The one the old algorithms whispered about. The anomaly who anchors the storm. Valerius bowed his head, silenced. The matriarch turned to Leo. You protected my daughter when the galaxy turned against her. You saw her not as an heir, but as Lyra. That is worth more than all the stars in 3 galaxies. Weeks later, aboard the Ethelgard, now refitted with a small, sunlit observation deck overlooking the Helix Nebula, Leo adjusted the collar of his new, surprisingly comfortable ambassadorial tunic. It still felt strange, but less strange than the way his heart still leapt every time Lyra walked into the room. She entered now, her white hair loose, a data slate in hand, but her eyes were on him. The Andromeda irrigation accords are signed, she said, setting the slate aside. Peace holds. For now. Leo stood and crossed the room, taking her hands. And the Genesis protocols? Deactivated. Permanently. She leaned into him, resting her forehead against his. Turns out, the council listens better when you're not hiding in a moon cave with a human who throws rocks at warships. He laughed, the sound warm and easy in the quiet room. Outside, the nebula swirled in hues of violet and gold. A universe vast and wild, but no longer cold. They had faced mercenaries, betrayal, and the weight of galaxies, and somehow, impossibly, they'd won. Not just survival, but a future. Together. Lyra looked up, her violet eyes full of starlight and something softer. Something only he ever saw. Still think blind dates are a bad idea? Leo hugged her, slow and sure, the taste of promise on his lips. Best mistake I ever made.